Sorry about that.
Open the gate!
As you'll already know if you've been keeping an eye on the channel this week, I recently spent a few hours with Far Cry New Dawn and had a pretty good time. While it recycles the map from Far Cry 5, in the same way Far Cry Primal reused the map from Far Cry 4, it nonetheless innovates in a few interesting ways to create a Far Cry experience that's as fun as it is vibrant. That said, I went into the demo without knowing loads about Far Cry New Dawn and quickly found there were a few things I really wish I had known before plunging headlong into the post-apocalyptic wilderness and, well, dying quite a bit. So, in order to save you the same fate and leave you better prepared than yours truly, here's what I wish I knew before playing Far Cry New Dawn. First up, smoke bombs are really bloody effective.
The hell?
Captain's reports the highwaymen have got people stealing goods off of corpses.
In the wilds of Far Cry New Dawn, you'll occasionally come up against a scavenger. These feckless opportunists can most commonly be found searching corpses for valuables, with sizable packs on their backs bearing the telltale logo of the highwaymen, your enemies. They're often so preoccupied with looting that you can sneak right up on them and start your attack, at which point the scavenger in question will almost certainly pop a smoke bomb and start making their escape. The first time this happened, I was properly bamboozled and nearly lost my quarry entirely. Thankfully, I was able to get out of the smoke and bring them down, but it has to be said that the smoke bombs have an impressively wide radius and do a great job of blotting out your line of sight. So, if you're not careful, the scavenger can give you the slip entirely, especially if they have a vehicle, which can cost you some seriously valuable loot. Happily though, they only tend to throw the one smoke bomb, so if you can get out into the open air and pick up the trail again, you shouldn't really have any trouble chasing them down and teaching them the error of their dastardly corpse looting ways by gunning them to death and, looting their corpse. Anyway, we'll skip over the hypocritical nature of this particular side activity for the moment. In summary, scavengers valuable, smoke bombs tricky, scavengers very happy to use said smoke bombs. Good. Now, if you watched my previous video on Far Cry New Dawn, you'll know that enemies are now separated into 3 tiers based on their toughness. The first tier is where you'll find the weakest enemies, typically showing a lot of flesh due to a general lack of body armour. From there, gear becomes more plentiful and effective, meaning you'll either need to spend most of a clip to bring an enemy down, or else find yourself a better weapon. And then the third and final tier is for your proper bullet sponge enemies, the ones with armour you need to chip away at in order to start doing any real damage. Now, at this point, you may be thinking, no problem, the patented flashy Far Cry knife kills are back in Far Cry New Dawn, so I'll just go shank one of them with one of those. Nice and stealthy, quick and easy. I know you might be thinking this because it's a thought process I had myself while sneaking up on some enemies in New Dawn, only to discover that actually, while your little pokey knife is perfect for the weaker grunts, trying to bring down a tier 2 or 3 enemy with the same technique just won't cut it. In fact, it's a surefire way to raise the alarm and or get yourself shot to bits. Do yourself a favour then and plan your approach a bit more carefully than I did, otherwise you'll be caught in the middle of an outpost with your trousers round your ankles and a very pissed off group of enemies now focusing all their attention on you. Now, as important as this lesson is to learn, it's not to say that you can't ever kill a higher tiered enemy with a melee kill in Far Cry New Dawn, just that you need to invest some character points in unlocking the ability. As you'd expect from a Far Cry game, you earn character points as you progress, gather XP, and level up. Far Cry New Dawn is no exception. It feeds you a steady trickle of character points you can put into a series of perks. These perks, as you might well have guessed by now, include the ability to kill higher tiered enemies with a surprise melee attack. A simple enough solution to the problem, but still one I wish I knew about before rushing in and bouncing my blade off the first big bad guy I stumbled across. While we're talking about enemy tiers, actually, now is a good time to talk about the wildlife of Far Cry New Dawn. See, despite the fact the animals in the post-apocalyptic Hope County show no appreciable skill with body armour, the vast majority of them are, somehow, Tier 3 enemies, meaning your average moose can absorb a metric buttload of bullets before coming even close to carking it. And the same definitely goes for the bear I fought. In fact, I didn't so much fight the bear as run around the place in a series of ragged circles, getting in a few digs with my weapon of choice whenever I was able. I honestly don't know how I made it through this fight. See for yourself. Of course, every Far Cry game has at least one enemy that's a particular nightmare to deal with, whether it's the cassowary from Far Cry 3 or the absolute bastard honey badgers in Far Cry 4. Regrettably, the nuclear apocalypse has done nothing to stop Far Cry 5's Wolverine from showing up in Far Cry New Dawn and, you guessed it, being a right shit. Anyway, I'm in danger of getting carried away complaining about the animal kingdom here, so suffice it to say that a number of the animals you're going to meet in Hope County are a lot tougher than you think, especially the Wolverine, which frankly I think must be in an enemy tier all of its own. Anyway, where were we? Oh yeah, perks. So perks, as you might expect from a shooter with light RPG elements, are really good. Some of them are the same small quality of life improvements you'd expect from any such game, governing how many medpacks you can carry for instance, or whether you can use the grappling hook, but others afford you genuinely good opportunities to exploit the world around you, not to mention the chance to go for a real character build. While not the most exciting, one of the perks I really enjoyed from my demo time was the welding torch. A piece of kit that cost me 2 upgrade points, but allowed me to break into the numerous safes strewn about the world and harvest the high value loot inside. It also let me repair vehicles, which was really useful because in Far Cry, as in many other video games, I am an utterly abysmal driver. Anyway, as I said, Far Cry New Dawn isn't shy about feeding you character points and letting you unlock new perks, so there is absolutely zero chance you're going to miss out on them during your time with the game, but still, do make sure to give them a good read and invest carefully so you don't accidentally launch yourself down one particular character path and miss out on some of the really good, wacky stuff on offer. Now, I mentioned fixing vehicles a moment ago, so now is probably a pretty good time to talk about the various modes of transport on offer in Far Cry New Dawn, because there are more of them than you'd think. See, jumping into the world for the first time and knowing New Dawn takes place 17 years after the nuclear apocalypse, I kind of assumed that vehicles would be on the scarce side. I mean, if no new cars had been made in 17 years and society is having to completely rebuild itself, what are the chances I can just hop in a car and trundle off to the other side of the map whenever I please? Turns out, high. In short, I was too busy thinking about what the post-apocalypse might be like to remember that this is, of course, a Far Cry game. Therefore, it's vehicles galore. There are quad bikes, motorbikes with and without sidecars, boats, jet skis, and of course cars of all shapes and sizes being driven by friend and foe alike. You'll rarely have trouble catching a ride, in other words, so don't assume you need to get everywhere by foot, like I did during the first couple of minutes of playtime. And definitely don't accidentally jump off a mountainside and die, like I also did during the first couple of minutes of playtime. But hang on, you might be thinking, you do have a point there. While it is still a Far Cry game, it's a Far Cry game set in the post-apocalypse. Surely petrol and diesel supplies have run dry by now. How can there be so many different vehicles just puttering about the place? The answer, it turns out, is ethanol. Far Cry New Dawn has neatly sidestepped the logistical nightmare of sourcing fuel in a world ravaged by nuclear war by making ethanol a core part of its world. In fact, the post-apocalyptic economy, such as it is, revolves almost entirely around the stuff, meaning not only will you spend a good amount of time sourcing barrels of ethanol in order to upgrade certain parts of Providence, your base of operations in Far Cry New Dawn, but it also means there's a perfectly good story justification for there being so many working internal combustion engines in New Dawn's brave new world. With ethanol being such an important resource, you're probably wondering how best to get it for yourself. Well, you'll get some as mission rewards and just in the course of normal playtime, but if you're really in a tight spot, you can always return to an outpost you've previously liberated and choose to scavenge ethanol from it. As I mentioned in another video, scavenging ethanol from the outpost basically turns it back over to the enemy and makes it one tier higher, meaning it has better defences and tougher enemies on sight. They're a challenge to take back, but given the ethanol yield involved in scavenging from an outpost is pretty high, you're going to want to do it at least once during your time with Far Cry New Dawn. One last word on ethanol, in fact. I mentioned you can use it to unlock things such as higher tier weapons or better explosives, but do be careful how you spend it, especially in the early stages of the game. Some of the upgrades are really expensive, and you might well find yourself unable to afford an upgrade you really wanted. I did this to myself with the expeditions, which was really quite annoying as I didn't have enough time to earn more ethanol and give them a whirl for myself. Expeditions are basically special missions accessed by helicopter that take you out of Hope County and into different parts of the country, offering a very different experience with each one. So yeah, learn from my mistakes and keep a close eye on your ethanol stocks. You'll thank me later. And there you have it, that's what I wish I knew before playing Far Cry New Dawn. Hopefully I've managed to make your own start that little bit easier, if indeed you are planning on picking up the game for yourself. Are you? Let us know in the comments. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, there are plenty more on the channel for you to watch, including other videos on Far Cry New Dawn. Some of them should be on screen now, so feel free to give one of those a click. Do like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss anything else from Eurogamer, but most importantly, thank you very much for watching, watch out for Wolverines, and have a very lovely day.